isn't they haven't quite got the same sort of level of climbing talent, so the successes they'll look for and the glory they'll look for could well come earlier in the week before we hit the big mountains. Let's have a look at, looks like we're getting pictures of yesterday, and that was the moment in that group of 3 from the initial 11 when Kasper Asgreen took his leave and decided that enough was enough, and he had enough strength to outlast not just his breakaway companions but the bunch charging behind. He turned out to be absolutely true to his own convictions and just crawled across the line in Loudéac yesterday, just a few seconds in front of the bunch. But critically, with his hands in the air, getting the victory, and he's now in the yellow jersey, and you can just spot him in second or third row there on towards the right of shot. Red shorts and the yellow jersey of the overall race leader, Kasper Asgreen. US national team starting to gravitate towards the front. They want to keep Neilson Powless into a comfortable position, make sure that he's not going to get caught up in any split that comes at the back end for crash reasons or whatever. It's not unheard of course, and as a general classification contender, Neilson Powless will be very concerned about making sure that he stays well to the fore. Still 28 kilometers remaining, but the gap down well inside a minute. The way things are going, they're going to mop these riders up not too long from now.
Yeah, like I said, they are catching them a bit too quickly, and I wonder whether they're going to be able to slow themselves down before they make the catch with 25 or 20 kilometers to go. And we mentioned earlier in the broadcast about the race radios and the fact that there aren't any on these riders, so there's no way for the sport directors to communicate with them and guide them as to what to do and not to do. And yes, I guess to a certain extent that could be a good thing. The riders have to learn and make the mistakes themselves and so on, but at the same time I think a certain amount of guidance from the experienced sport directors would help these guys an awful lot. And we're talking even more so probably down into to the junior ranks, where the sport director really can actually guide the riders to do the right things, and it becomes so much easier.
So the radios when they're young, but then take them away?
Yeah, well, I prefer that way around, because at least with these guys, if they haven't got that experience, and it takes the debrief before the race and the debrief after the race, it's really quite difficult to make with the riders and go through everything and understand everything and what the thought process was and why it was like that and what they could have done instead and so on and so on. There's so much speculation, whereas when you're getting information from the race radio sitting in a team car, you can understand what the scenario is. You can sometimes, a fair amount of the time, you can see up ahead, see who's riding in the bunch, and talk to the riders and say, look, at this point this and this and this is what's happening. What do you think would be the best way forward? Ask the question to the riders. They then have a bit of a chat as to what to do, come back to you as a team manager and say, right, we think we're going to apply this tactic right now, and if that's completely out of the window, then you can stop them, and if it's not, then you kind of let them run with it, and you have an opportunity then to go back and discuss that in a better way afterwards. So it's more about the teaching of the right way of doing things, and I think so even more so when you're going down into junior ranks and really start helping the guys from an earlier age.
Of course, at this level of racing, it's a relatively rare event where they have television.
Yeah.
So the DSs back in the cars don't always have the images and don't necessarily have a very full understanding of what's going on in the race as it's actually happening.
But I think that's even better, because it means that you as a rider then have to feed back a certain amount of information to the sport director sitting back in the car, which again is another form of activating their sort of thought process and brains as to what is actually happening around me, who's doing what, who's got riders up there, what are they doing, why is that team riding, and then sort of feed back some sort of a picture to the sport director and have a discussion about what's what, and then come up with a strategy as to how you as a team and as an individual rider go forward.
And the best DS, it's interesting to hear you talk about it, that there's sometimes perhaps you might imagine that the DS actually tells you what to do, and here's the instruction. But no, it's more of a collaborative process. You're asking for the riders' input.
Depends on the DS, I think. So certain DSs, yes, very much a dictatorship where you've been told exactly what to do at what point and so on. But at the same time, the directors aren't there. They don't feel the race. They don't feel what you feel. They can't see the same picture. Like what we see from a helicopter shot and from TV camera shots is one thing. What you see sitting in the bunch is a completely different thing. And I think the two together makes for a better decision, a more qualified decision as to what you do tactically. And I think that's what we need to sort of help the riders do and guide them into that position, so that when we get into World Tour, maybe we can take the radios away. I've always been in sort of I prefer having the radio involved, but only one rider.
Yes, that debate will rage and rage, but certainly it is an interesting perspective. It's perhaps counterintuitive that they take them away at the very point in their careers when they might be of most benefit, rather than the other way around. That's the situation as it prevails. This one's coming down like a rocket, so if there's any sort of way of communicating by semaphore, carrier pigeon, or whatever it takes up to those riders in the breakaway, I think the message would be, if you have any energy, this would probably be the time to start applying it to the pedals, because down to half a minute, it's looking ominous. The groups spread wide across the road. Again, counterintuitively, you might think that they're going a little bit easier, but in actual fact, pretty much all the teams are just putting that little bit of extra intensity into it, and everybody wants to get up to the front. So it's starting to rev up a little bit. They're heading back to Bignan for another tour in this second stage of Tour de l'Avenir. And their advantage has been pared down even more, down to just 15 seconds as the bunch charge along behind and breast the tape. But they've got 2 laps of this 11-kilometer circuit remaining in the second stage of Tour de l'Avenir, and the 2 up front, their time is borrowed and now can be measured just in minutes out front at the very most. It's just a 19-second advantage for Maxime Roger of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes on the front in the white and blue colours. Spends as much time out of the saddle as in it whenever the road goes up. And his breakaway companion from the Breton region, Adrien Garel, takes a well-earned drink. You sense that they're not going to resist too much. Will there be a little bit of a late flurry? Will one or other of them want to be the last man standing? There is a most aggressive rider competition, and it is jury-led. Chief Commissar is the race director. He heads up a small panel, and they decide, and then there is an award at the end of the week as well. It's no social media vote involved in that, so no opportunity for controversy such as we saw at with the application of that award in the Tour de France. Warren Barguil had a pretty good tour as it was, ending up very much the dare not to say it, I won't say but basically he was everybody's favourite, wasn't he? And he ended up getting that little flick of the elbow there as Garel calls for Roger to make his appearance. Bunch spread wide, all of those teams into position, trying to lock it out at the front, trying to control what they have and stay up there.
Still being driven really quite hard on the front there though by various individual riders from teams, almost like they're drag racing to protect their position within the bunch on this somewhat narrow road, which could be a reason as to why this is actually happening.
Yeah, it's narrow enough that like if 3 or 4 teams get in the front, they want to stay. You know? Yeah, and that stops anyone from coming up, because you literally can't get past short of having a jetpack. I'm sure that's illegal in some sense, probably every sense. Down to 5 seconds. A little look across from Roger. Adrien Garel will be a rider that probably remember for the rest of his career, this moment out front, and it tends to be these events early in a rider's career he tends to retain the memory of right through to the end. So many big races come and go, no matter what the length of the career, but the big ones at the start of your racing career, those are the ones that are remembered.
Yeah, you tend to remember that quite a lot. And for some reason, I mean, every rider is different, but I somehow seem to remember racing certain days in certain countries, certain races, even as long back as you know, when you were a youth rider. Here we go then, French national team getting on the front. National champion.
Indeed, it's attack time, and it is the French national squad that are putting riders on the front. Remember, Madoua finished 8th on the stage yesterday, having got into the early breakaway, hung on out front. The German national squad, well, they were sort of gravitating towards the front, so there's no surprise that they've put a rider on the front. Absolutely smashing it. Haven't managed to create any gap whatsoever, but not as yet. And looks like Hennessy as well, is it, that's sitting in 3rd place, who is setting the tempo and making sure that no one's going to get a free spin off the front here. Let's have a look at this. French going racing here.
They certainly are. I think it's going to be difficult whatever you do from this moment on now. There's so many of the riders are going to be all over this and making sure that they're covering all the moves.
Now it's Poland who put another rider on the front. Remember, Alan Banaszek. Alan Banaszek, good 6th place finish yesterday, and the Polish team put riders into the chase and had riders on the front in the closing stages, so got themselves organised. Now perhaps trying a different tactic. Of course, different tactics in play, because no riders up front now, inside 20 kilometres to go on this 2nd stage of the Tour de l'Avenir. The Belgians have come with a team packed with talent, as you might expect. Stef Kra, Stan de Wolf, Björg Lambrecht, Emil Plankert, Aaron Verwilst and Ward Jaspers is the Belgian lineup. Just a narrow lead, and now the Norwegians again trying to put manners on the group. They've put a rider on the front, just trying to control the tempo and continue to set an agenda that makes it difficult for any rider to get off the front. And it literally, these attacks are producing an advantage of no more than a few meters at a time.
No, and I think what we find is, because we got effectively just 8.5 kilometers to go, everyone knows that if they let any rider go up the road right now, then it's going to be very, very difficult to bring them back and make sure that you keep check of anything. And there are a couple of bigger teams here now who are going to want the bunch sprint, and with that they'll work hard.
Top tube cycling, it just depends it's not just dangerous, it looks silly, but it is productive. So I mean, you know, people.
Well, the thing is, it's not though.
Really?
It's not.
There seem to be two schools of thought.
Oh, wow.
Have we not been told that in the wind tunnel it actually does produce some value? I don't know. I think it should be banned one way or another.
Yeah.
We're definitely joined in.
I totally agree with you on that. So there we go.
Well, they're going to do it. They see it on telly, and they are young riders in a hurry, and they want to be with their heroes. Paulus has come to the front. That's impressive. The US national champion finished 2nd in the elite championship, much like Chris Lawless to Larry Warbass, and with it took the under-23 national title. That's Nielsen Paulus just sitting 2nd in line. Looks like the Aussies have come to the fore as well. And no rider, I think, from the big squads or the favourite squads is going to find themselves caught out if there's any counter-attack of any significance. And just as I say, Colombia trying to move up to the front. Russia also responding here, and the US also very much involved. Looks like
Sivakov.
Yeah, Sivakov well to the fore. So the big hitters, and this is again, you know, we've a long way to go to get to those stages at the end of the week, but the heavy hitters are willing to go attacking in the early stages of what's billed as one for the sprinters.
Yeah, I think as well, because we've got the 6-man teams here, and we're talking young 6-man riders, 6-man teams as well. You've got to go into a race like this with a certain sort of sense of thinking, I'm doing a bunch of individual one-day races that at the end of that will have an outcome of some sort on a general classification. So looking at just making sure every day you race it like it's a one-day race, and you see where you end up, and then the next day you're doing the same thing. By the time we get into the back end of the week and we're starting to go up into the higher mountains, that's when you can start racing it like it's a stage race and start thinking about what you do when and where and so on. So there's a bit more sort of, you gotta spend the energy from your teammates wisely. You gotta make sure that when you get into the back end of the day, that you're there making sure that you're in the right moves and in the right position, and in that way I think you'll end up with a better outcome.
Big guys go racing every day, and that's why we love Tour de l'Avenir. So the attacks are coming with relentless repetition as Portugal put their riders on the front. They've got Oliveira, who's in good sprinting form and is surely a rider that can sprint to glory. Looks like Chris Lawless is just slotted in fourth position there. Just over 10 miles of racing remaining, 16 kilometers as in the decimal format, and that's the riders on the front are the Portuguese national team with Chris Lawless, the British national under-23 title winner, just sitting fourth or fifth rider back and putting himself into prime position to benefit if there's a move heading off the front.
Yeah, I'd say he's sitting a bit too close to the front at the moment, taking quite a bit of wind in that position. I'd say he'd want to drift back a couple of more places, and obviously when he's sitting that close to the front, any move that's coming, any of the riders coming from behind here now, if the pace should drop a little bit, it means it's so much more difficult to step out and accelerate up to the speed that the rider coming from behind is coming with, and in that way make that jump across and get dragged away in some sort of a break. So I'd say it's still that 15th position roughly. See the Russian rider Sivakov on the left hand side of your picture there in the red shorts. That's a good position to sit in. He's kind of got a control of everything. He can get clear when he wants to, but he's still not right on the front.
Time for a wave at the fans at the side of the road. Great to see, enjoying the racing, and everyone's enjoying this, aren't they? Because the hammer is down and they're pushing on, and where is the next attack going to come from? Because there's a sense that Portugal, I think, just want to set a tempo that prevents the attacks, and so far that's been relatively successful, very successful indeed, because no one seems to be able to manage to get off the front. Portugal down into this tight right-hander once more. They're all familiar with these roads now. They've been around them on a couple of occasions. To get the bell next lap round, 11.7 kilometers, 11.6 kilometers indeed, remaining on the ticker is where they should hit the finishing line. And Portugal have hit the front. They've hit it early. Will they be able to? Do they have the riders to control for any length of time? At the moment, the other team's satisfied with this tempo that's being set. Many riders in there incapable of moving up. Others were just waiting in the wheels and waiting to make their move. At the moment, the entire Portuguese team doing a very strong job, and that's much to the satisfaction, I think, of the Danish lineup. Kasper Asgreen will be satisfied with this. The Norwegians have, to a certain extent, I won't say gone back in their box, but they're just quietly watching what's happening after such great work today.
Yeah, and rightly so. I think the Portuguese team have taken over, and they're working extremely hard to kind of try and stay on the front of the bunch right now. Probably doing too much at this stage with still just under 14 kilometers to the finish line. They want to just try and save that bit of energy, but it's something that's so difficult with the younger sort of riders. There, we're talking, even down to juniors and younger than that. It's understanding that using other riders from other teams and actually working with them. It's to your benefit, rather than try and have a chat with them when they're coming up. Do you want to have a work a bit with us? Chuck one or two of your boys in here, and we can work together and actually make a better plan with that. You're saving energy for your guys, and that means that you're going to be in a better position later on, because these guys, the Portuguese guys now, slightest little bit of a move here now and they're going to get swallowed up, and pretty much a lot of them are going to get swallowed into the bunch and struggle to find position again. Well,
there's the move you predicted, and it certainly looks as if Portugal are not able to control it. Britain and Ireland, it looks like Michael O'Loughlin has just tagged on to the back of this trio, but it's a narrow advantage. United States aren't going to let that one go clear. Was it the Auvergne squad, or one of the Luxembourg riders, just deciding to attack there. Immediately called to account, so that one not working out on this occasion. Down to the final 12.5 kilometers and down into the finishing town of Bagnes. With the British team now controlling on the front. 1 lap remaining. Tour de l'Avenir stage 2 is hotting up. Not everyone believes in their sprint, so the attacks will continue to come, and it's just about what teams can prevent it. Portugal not quite able to forge an alliance that would turn their team from a 6-man team into a 12-man team, and because other teams will surely have this have a similar ambition to keep it together for a sprint.
Yeah, and you know, like I said just now, that whole idea of having another team working with you, it's the same sort of thing. If you're thinking about, well, we want to start doing a bit of work here, don't wait too long to go up and have a chat with that team. So the Portuguese and the Brits here now, they could start quite a nice collaboration and keep the pace very, very high without it costing them too much. You can pretty much sacrifice 2 riders, one from each team, for the next 5 or 6 kilometers, and just have them go as hard as they possibly can and string everything out behind, which means that you're leaving a load of guys from your team in the bunch or just behind, actually ready to take on the charge when it's really necessary to.
Portugal got back in control of this one. They get the bell. The British squad are there as well. Mark Stewart well to the fore. Post CRC rider is in great lead-out form and looking after the interests of Ollie Wood and perhaps Chris Lawless as well. Their sprinter. Other sprinters to watch out for. Well, we'll run through the list as they wind their way back into the countryside with just 11 kilometers remaining. Britain control with just over 10 kilometers left in this stage 2 of the Tour de l'Avenir, and there's a divergence in the bunch, but they reconvene, and it is still the British squad controlling the pace to try and set something up for Oliver Wood, or perhaps Chris Lawless will take his national champions jersey to glory today. Other riders to watch out for, well, great sprinting performance yesterday from the Frenchman Valentin Madouas. Great 8th place after being in the break all day long. If he replicates that with a little bit of energy saved today, who would bet against him?
Keep an eye out for the Italian as well, Emedio Cima. He certainly looked very, very good yesterday, and was challenging Halvorsen for the sprint. So
yeah, third across the line, was second in the bunch gallop. Emedio Cima is a fine sprinter, was 4th in the ZLM Tour earlier this year. The Italian squad, much like yesterday, haven't shown themselves much in evidence. They're trying to save as much energy as possible for this finishing sprint. Certainly they're the riders to watch out for. Banaszek, we've mentioned, from the Polish team, was 6th over the line in yesterday's stage. Halvorsen, of course, is the reigning world road race champion and the man in the green jersey with the of course not wearing the world champions stripes. Rui Oliveira, well, his Portuguese team have said to him, well, we're willing to work for you, what can you do by way of return? So Oliveira certainly has all the motivation that he needs to come up with success today. Emmanuel Morin as well, watch out for the Breton outfit. He was 4th across the line in yesterday's stage. Ollie Wood 5th on that occasion. Mark Downey for the Irish team has taken a couple of World Cup successes on the track in the points race in the last track season. He's a very fast finisher. He was 7th across the line for the Irish team yesterday. Rubashenko as well of Belarus is a very fine sprinter and was in the top 10 yesterday. Hodeg from Colombia, well, we mentioned Colombian sprinters, Gaviria et al., and he would like to continue that trend, not just climbers, you know. And he is another man to watch out for in the back end of this stage. Jacobsen as well from the Netherlands. We've seen the orange jerseys sporadically on the front, but very much the British team setting the agenda. They're keeping Their riders in prime position at the moment. The question is, can they stay up there for another 8.5 kilometres?
That is the big question, and there's still that sort of drag race scenario between the Poles and the Brits at the moment, rather than maybe trying to merge those two setups and sort of help each other work a bit. But right now, they're sort of moving from left to right of the road, trying to block other teams to come up, and I'd say within the next sort of 2 kilometers they are going to starting to get challenged by certainly the Swiss are looking in good formation on the right hand side of the road, just ready to start putting on some pressure as well.
Yeah, the Swiss team have the big strong engine that is Patrick Muller to call on to try and set the tempo. The big Chateau. Kerguelen is anyone there? I think they're probably all out watching the bike race if they've any sense. There's a big bike race coming past with less than 5 miles remaining, 7.8 kilometers. Would be interesting to see exactly what's happening in the bunch behind. Bunch up front. The early break has been called to account. Brave effort. Ultimately all to naught, and just as we resume and pick up the action, well, it's one of the riders from Brittany and one of the riders from Norway. So Norway on the attack, having done so much of the chasing earlier on. Perhaps this is a good way of playing it.
Well, it's not a bad idea to put it like this, because obviously going for an attack, you're going to cause a reaction in the bunch, and if you find yourself that your team is stuck sort of halfway down the bunch and they can't really move up because of a fairly narrow road and so on, and you as a lone rider find yourself in a position where you can get to the front, put a big attack in, because what happens here, the bunch gets strung out, there's plenty of space to move up, so the Norwegian team can sort of sort themselves out and try and regain position.
Yeah, it's a way of making the other teams chase as well, and it makes it easier for the Norwegians, who've done power of work already today to at least make sure that Halvorsen can be presented and they can save their legs as best they can for this final run to the line. Still a long way to go in relative terms when it comes to sprinting, but still just under 7 kilometers remaining. This duo managed to dangle out front all the way to the line. It would be a very impressive, brave effort. And look at the way that there's so much movement in the bunch behind. These riders are being shoveled from one gutter to the next. Just trying to make their way up on the left-hand side, suddenly find themselves squeezed in, and sometimes it's almost easier to go up the middle, isn't it?
It certainly can be.
Brittany on the front. It doesn't look as if Norway want to get involved in this one. This is more of a policing move. Little flick of the elbow, but no contribution. Well, just as I say it, just about the long turns, really. Definitely a contrast in stature between these two riders. But while they're just lingering and loitering out front, surely this is a gap that is well within the compass of the bunch to close down. The narrow roads contributing to the advantage and the possibility really for these two riders, but well, it's a straight road as well, and it's such a narrow advantage that surely they won't be able to hang on.
No, I think that would be very difficult when we're really getting down to the nitty-gritty of the lead out, but Norwegian friend is going for another move, trying to go on at it on his own, clearly feeling that he's still got legs to stretch the bunch and to make sure that they're having to work hard to catch.
Well, he got what he needed out of his breakaway companion. Now it's time to forge on and to glory, and this would be the perfect situation for Halvorsen. Is this, well, they're saying it's Halvorsen, but I can assure you it's not. And who is behind, because well, it's a bit of an advantage. He's managed to just stretch a little bit further clear.
I think it is actually Rasmus Tiller.
Well, has Tiller managed to steer himself clear of the field? It's certainly agonizing stuff. They're calling Tiller as well, as a variety of different names being presented to us. And he looks behind, and it's worth riding on. 5 kilometers remaining. The other team's just waiting. Norway to the good with that advantage. Indeed it is Tiller who's just about hanging on. Rasmus Tiller, the national road race champion at the under-23 level of Norway, is in personal agony right now, but it's effective stuff and it's doing a great job for Halvorsen, his teammate, his World Championship winning teammate, the man in the green jersey at the moment, the man who was second over the line yesterday, and Norway with a great chance of converting that into a first today, because they've got Rasmus Tiller clear of the field and Halvorsen waiting to pounce behind. These narrow roads will be to his advantage right now.
Yeah, they certainly will be, but regardless of how that goes, he's going to have to press on here and not really look around too much, just focus on driving that as hard as he can. It's still a decent gap, you know, down to the bunch, but with 4 kilometers to go, it's a big ask, and none of the sort of real fight for position down in the bunch has happened yet, and I think that's what's going to really start pushing the pace up in the peloton.
He's a pretty fast finisher in his own right, is Rasmus Tiller. He got 8th on a stage of the Arctic Tour of Norway last year. It doesn't sound that impressive until you see that some of the riders that he was up against. Well, the winner of the stage was Alexander Kristoff, John Degenkolb, Danny van Poppel, Moreno Hofland, make a list. They were all very strong World Tour level riders that were up against Rasmus Tiller. He managed to mix it with them. He has got broad shoulders that would be absolutely perfect in a big bunch to fight for position. Well, right now he's decided on an alternative tack. He's gone for glory. 6 seconds they're showing, dangling out front, 3.5 kilometers remaining. Surely it's beyond them to hang on, but I tell you what, it would be an extraordinary and wonderful achievement if he does manage to do it.
Yeah, it certainly would be, but all of these corners now is certainly helping him a lot to stay clear. The moment we hit this big road is where all the power is going to come into play, whether he's got the legs to stay clear or not, because the bunch is now starting to charge.
The bunch charges on. Another right-hander helps to stretch them thin and make it just a little bit more difficult, but look at the way that riders are absolutely flat chat now in pursuit of Rasmus Tiller. What a wonderful effort, because he is clear of a group that has plenty of riders on the front. Looks like the Netherlands have put a rider into position as they try and set something up for perhaps Fabio Jakobsen to do a ride. Julius van den Berg as well was 13th over the line yesterday for the Netherlands outfit, so they have riders aplenty who are capable of getting involved. And it's the Dutch riders. They've got a duo on the front of the bunch on the left-hand side of picture as we look at the big bunch behind. Well, he's added a couple of seconds to his advantage. He's going to need all of that and perhaps a couple of seconds more. And I think what's cruel about this is that all of the final 3 kilometers are uphill. It's almost imperceptible, but there's no man on planet Earth who knows exactly what this gradient is about more than Rasmus Tiller right now. It's about 2%. It's not a lot, but it's enough just to take the edge off him.
It's definitely enough to take the edge off him. That was a big movement going on in the bunch there. I'm just surprised that no one came down from that particular move to the left.
Yeah, it's pretty physical in there right now. You see so much movement from those riders trying to get themselves into position. Tiller steals a little look over his shoulder, sees that the bunch are right there, and he's absolutely in agony. The yellow jersey of Kasper Asgreen is in evidence just in the center of shot. Yellow jersey, red shorts, overall leader of this race. We see the Czech team starting to gravitate into position as well, and all the teams have put their riders well to the fore. It's all up for Rasmus Tiller. Inside 2 kilometers to go. A brave effort, but such an impressive one. The Czech Republic go on the attack on the right-hand side of the road, and that drags the other teams over from the right, from the left to the right. Green jersey of Halvorsen in the center of shot is waiting for his opportunity. How many riders will he need? Neilson Powless there in the Stars and Stripes, mostly the stars in evidence there. He'll surely slip back a little bit. The British riders looking for Chris Lawless.
Lawless has just been left on his own up the front there now.
Poland on the front. They've got Banaszek, who's in prime position.
Got one of the Italian riders as well. The first time we see any of the Italian riders in this stage, just near the front, near the near the British rider.
Yeah, leaving it late is Chima, we believe, is in the centre of the picture. The Belgians trying to move up on the right-hand side of the picture as we look. Left-hand side of the road, it's the Polish just trying to drag it across onto the other side as now the attacks are coming. There's an opportunity for an attack under the kite, but surely not going to get an advantage. Switzerland right there.
Halvorsen in perfect position as well, with a teammate still there just behind the Polish two riders.
So going to the line, the Swiss have decided to put a rider onto the front, and it's the local squad, the Auvergne Rhône-Alpes squad, that have sit in second place. The Polish team looking to launch. Banaszek into perfect position. France are also in great shape. They've got Madua ready to launch as well. Halvorsen is ready to come as well. Watch for Halvorsen in the green jersey, is about to be presented from the as they go into the final turn. They've seen this turn already on 3 occasions. 500 meters remaining. It's a long run to the line. Poland own it at the moment. Banaszek 6th across the line yesterday. Oh, a crash. They go down at the worst possible place, and that's going to pull so many riders out of this sprint. But going to the line, it is Poland that launch, and is this Banaszek who's going to be swamped, I feel, as they sprint up the finish line. I say he's going to be swamped, but he's still hanging on. Colombia have put a rider into the sprint. It's Colombia going to get the glory as they go to the line. It is well, what about that? France get the victory. Extraordinary stuff, and that sprint just went on and on and on, and it was
the Dutch champion.
The Dutch champion indeed. That managed to get across, so it's a win for the Netherlands, for the Dutch national champion.
Just looking, coming around the last corner there, just the Frenchman pushes it a bit too hard going around that corner and drops it and causes that crash. Then we've got the Polish riders.
Well, Banaszek looked around, saw he had a gap, knew he had to go for it, and was going to have to lift this one all the way to the line. There was no way that he could survive up this long finishing straight. Halvorsen in perfect position, but just not quite able to get there in time. I believe that was Jakobsen. Fabio Jakobsen getting the win, getting his arms in the air, and it is victory on the second day of the Tour de l'Avenir. It came from a long way back.
And Jakobsen is very lucky. He's the the sort of the one rider that the Frenchman doesn't take out in that crash, and just manages to squeeze through, and then gets a perfect wheel, perfect lead out by our Colombian friend, and just stays very cool, very calm, waits for it, and then there was no question on who was the fastest man there. Halvorsen then coming up for third.
Looked like Hudeg from Colombia. Wait for confirmation of that, but certainly Jakobsen it was across the line. Halvorsen is very